Hello and welcome to another session of one of our members of the Divine Love community sharing their journey, their faith journey. I'm really looking forward to this.
As am I.
Good. Shall we introduce ourselves first and then perhaps say how long we've been on the Divine Love path? And then I'll say a prayer before we start. So Yvonne, would you like to start and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Yvonne Riley, and I've been on the Divine Love path for about 4 years now. So welcome, Lorraine. I'm excited to hear your story.
David?
Greetings, I'm David in very snowy central Pennsylvania, and I've been on this path since 2012, approximately.
Wow. And I'm Beth, and I'm from Lincolnshire in the UK, and I'm a newbie. I've only been on this path for 7 months, so it's a very short time. We will start, and we'll be asking Lorraine questions after she's done her talk. We don't want to stop your flow, Lorraine. But before we start, shall we have a prayer?
Let's do that.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, may we share together here what we share together here. May it help others to learn of your love. And if they choose, help them to have a personal relationship with you. May the whole world come to know that God's love is unconditional and is available to anyone who asks for this special gift. We thank you, dear Father, and we love you. Amen. Over to you, Lorraine.
All right, so I'm Lorraine Borchers. I live in Bend, Oregon. I've lived in Oregon all my life. That's one of the states on the west coast of the United States, and Bend is in the central part of Oregon. So as I said, I've lived in Oregon most of my life, all of my life except 1 year. I was born in Mount Angel, which is a small Catholic town, to a family of, we had 9 children, and I was the middle. I have a twin brother. I went to Catholic schools all my life, graduated from a Catholic high school, and then was on my own as of 18 years old. And during those first 18 years, we were very strong practicing Catholics. There was prayer every day. I grew up just having conversations with God, not just structured prayer, but just talking with prayer to God. And then I left my family home at 18, was on my own, and I left my practice of religion. I felt I had had enough, and that I was had probably stored up enough for a long time. Well, that's not true, but that's how I felt. And so I lost that close connection until, not the close connection. What I lost was the desire to practice formal religion, to attend church every Sunday and to follow the rules. That's what I did not want to do anymore. And so during that time, my 20s and 30s, I read Shirley MacLaine books, which are her spiritual books, and knew that something was missing in my life. I kept feeling that I wanted to go home, but I found that home was not my family home. And I thought, well, when I have my own family, that will be home. But there was still something missing. And it was later in my 30s that I realized home was really being with God. And once I came to that realization, I started looking for people on in this world with whom I could relate and have community with. But meanwhile, I got married, had children, and my husband and I decided that we really needed outside support in helping raising these 3 children so that they would learn to respect life and our world, and to have values that were supported more by more other people than just ourselves. And so we did enroll them in Catholic school, and we started going to the Catholic Church once again. And that all went quite well until the children became young teenagers, and they just sensed the emptiness. And the 2 boys just said they were not going to church anymore. There was nothing there for them, which was quite interesting. And it led me to rethink my feelings about attending a formal church service and having a formal religion. So I questioned that, and I moved away again. And we still had a spiritual practice. I can remember having discussions, particularly with one son, about spiritual life. So I feel that we didn't lose it. We just lost that desire to have a formal religion in our life. And then I was working, and life just happened, how busy life can get with a family. So just continued on that. I did have an interest in the metaphysical, never pursued it until at 56, I quit work because of health concerns. And for a year, I read many, many spiritual books, metaphysical. The first book that my brother gave me actually was on Edgar Cayce. I think it was called The America's Prophet, and it talked about spiritual help in healing. And I think that had reincarnation in there as well, which was something that we as Catholics did not believe in. But I liked that idea. So I kind of gravitated towards reincarnation and was enticed by that. So I was still searching. I got into the metaphysical environment, I guess you could call it. I had psychic readings done, which I found very interesting. And all this time, though, I felt I was looking for people who were of like-minded. And I didn't know what divine love was called, but I knew I had it. I've had that connection with God since I was a very young child. In fact, I often think of my experience with my twin brother. We were laying on the grass one beautiful sunshiny day, looking at the clouds and, making figures and just having a great time talking with each other. And so we were about 5 years old, I think. And I just felt it was an amazing feeling. Like I couldn't tell where my body was and the rest of me relative to the world. It was like I was just melded in that, and in that sense of bliss and peace, I guess, is what I would say, even at that age. And so I could always refer to that. And I didn't realize until much later, once I discovered divine love, that that's what it was. It was being so melded with the universe, I guess. And now I often recall that feeling when things are going hard, when I'm in the middle of some great sadness or soul expiation, which is releasing hurts and wounds of the soul. I go to that place of being laying on the grass and just being immersed. And one other time I had that, I well, I have always believed in angels. And this one time, I was out on the beach with my sister and a friend, and it was one of those very unusual days in Oregon. The water was warm, there was no wind at the ocean. It was a beautiful summer day, and we decided to walk out into the ocean. And we walked out to our necks. So my sister on one side, my friend was in the middle, and I was on the other side, and she was holding on to us. And I said, I can't swim. And she said, don't worry, I'll hold on to you. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, 18 years old, I just went, and we were up to our necks in water. And it was, again, that feeling of being so immersed in something that, you know, my head was there and I knew where I was, but it was a delightful feeling. And that's the feeling I have again with divine love. And in fact, one time so I'm going to stray now because this relates to the ocean. We were praying, and I think one of the messages said, we receive divine love drop by drop. And I thought, I want a lot more than drop by drop. And I want to rush a flood of this. And oh my gosh, I was swept up and carried in this river out to the ocean. This was during quiet prayer, carried out to the ocean. And again, I had the same sense of like when I was 18 in that ocean. It was just so wonderful. It was, if I had to describe the feeling, it was warm, floating, and the ocean, you know, I wasn't on top of the ocean this time, I was in the middle of it. And it was like the whole universe. It was awesome. I mean, so I have those three particular things that I remember as the feeling of divine love physically. Okay, so what else shall I share with you about that? Maybe I've always had a knowing. I've always known the best way to like raise my family, solve problems. It's like I've had guidance from outside of myself, inspiration, whatever you want to call it. And intuition, I think, is what I've always called it. And when I've not followed that, I pay for it. One time I had to drive like 25 miles to work every day, and there were 3 different routes I could take. And so this one day, it was a beautiful March morning. I thought I should really go this way, but I really want to drive along the river, and it was a longer winding way, but that's how I wanted to go that morning. Even though I knew that that probably was not the right way. Well, I got in a really bad rut that day. And I realized after that, because then I had weeks to think about things. And I realized that I had that intuition and I wasn't following it. I had 3 instances on that same road within the 2 weeks before that were very close calls. And so I should have gone the other way, but I didn't want to that day, and I paid for it. So after that, I pay attention to my intuition. If I get a sense that I should be doing something different, I will stop and consider that. In fact, I have, and this is, I guess, my spiritual journey. This is one of my gifts, is this knowing, this intuition. So then I started, once I realized I need to start using my intuition more, I did, but I still didn't know that it was a spiritual gift that I was using. And until I started reading all the metaphysical stuff, then I actually started trying things out. And one of the things I tried out was if I had to make a decision, I would say red was for no, green was for yes. And I would look around and I would see a predominance of red. That meant no. And then I'd go with no. And so then I evolved beyond that and got to the practice of 1 to 10. 1 or 0 being no, not at all, and 10 is yes, over the top, do it. And so now I have a decision to make, even like involving other people in a decision or a plan. I'll say, what level is this plan? Like, do I want to take this trip? It's a 8 for me, then it's a go. If it's a 2, no, don't even think about it anymore. But if it has to be over a 5. If it's a 5 to 7, then I have to think about it. And if it's 5 to 7 with someone else, then they get to think about it. And I actually use that with I started using it with my grandchildren because, you know, children, they'll defer to an adult, especially someone they love. And I don't want them to be doing things they really don't want to just because they want to please me. So this one particular time, this was when I first started doing this, I was with my 12-year-old granddaughter and we pulled off alongside a lake and we had our kayaks with us, and it was getting late and it was cold. And I said, Sophie, should we go paddling? And she said, yeah, we can do that. And I thought, oh, I feel, for myself, it was a 7. So I probably would have done it, but I didn't know what it was for her. And I said, Sophie, 1 to 10, how much do you want to do this? 3. And I said, okay, let's go home. And that was so simple. And so now I do that very often with all of my grandchildren. And, you know, it's like, tell me the first number that comes to your mind, and it works. So that's one thing that I would encourage other people to give a try if they feel like it. Let's see, what else should I tell you? Maybe I'll tell you how I pray now. Like I said, I've had conversations all my life with God, and I still do that. But I'm also now have more times where I will sit and start with words, but then I evolve into just feelings and a yearning for God's love, not able to really voice what it is that I want or how I feel. Many times I just feel such love and what I would call praise for God and what creation I'm involved in, and all the help I've been given through my life. And that's one of the gifts I'm asking to develop, is to have the words to describe that, so that I can share with other people this feeling that I have, that I want everyone to have. I just feel so blessed that I discovered divine love and a community of divine love, which happened when Al and Jean Fike came to stay at my house. They were on a road trip and were invited by a friend to come to my house to spend a couple nights. And unknown to me, they were actually planning a retreat, and which I was delighted to participate in. So they drive into my driveway, and these were people I didn't know, had never even seen pictures of them, and they drive into my driveway, and I had the sense that, oh, these people are okay. Then I go outside and meet them on the driveway, and it's like family. It was like, this is what I've been looking for. See, that knowing kicked in, and I just knew right away. And so the Fikes live in Gibsons, BC, And a few months later, I did go visit them. And that's where I really grew in recognition of soul awareness, of messages from spirits that are actually communicated, channeled to us so that we can have a contemporary understanding of soul growth and awareness. So through the Fikes, I have met many, many people, you three in particular, and am now involved in prayer circles. We're doing those online because of the pandemic, which has opened up a whole new arena of experiences. I've gone on retreats with them, and I've really grown. It's become, my spiritual life has become as real as my physical life. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's great. And I've had many experiences with angels, and yeah. So at this point, I should probably stop talking, let you ask some questions that if you want more details about things. So
I was going to say, Yvonne, you look as if you're ready. You're muted. You're muted.
there
We
she
loved
is.
your story about your intuition and your learning, or your not following your intuition about going on a particular road, because I had something similar happen to me. But could you explain a little bit when you're talking about, I ask myself, and if it's a 3, I don't go. If it's a 9, I go. How do you get that number? Can you sort of go through that process a little bit of what you do? Like, are you meditating when you do that? Do you simply ask the question and then wait for a number? Could you explain that a little bit?
I'll try. It's okay. 2 + 2 is what?
Or
Yeah. Did you have to add that in your head? You just knew it, right?
right.
That's what it's like. I can't explain it. It's
I just wondered when you were talking about that, whether you have any sort of idea that you've got a guide beside you telling you that.
Oh my gosh, yes. I didn't know, I knew I had a guardian angel all this time. Ever since, as a Catholic, we have our special guardian angel. We all know that, and they protect us. And indeed they have. Witness the ocean walking up to my neck. How silly is that now that that's something I never told my children until they were grown up, because I didn't want them doing that. But yes, I think it's probably a guide. In fact, I now live in a place where I can go this road or that road to get to my house. This road probably has a dangerous intersection. It could be. And so I'll often say, should I go that way? And I get a no, and I don't go that way. And it's, so Yvonne, I can't, it's, I think at first when I started, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do I want to do this? Or how important is this to me to do? And then I would get that number. And then but then I would check, because that's how I am. I would say, oh, I got an 8. That means go do it. And they'd say, yeah, but what if it's a 3, really? And my heart or something inside would say, no, it's an 8. So I would say, if you're interested, practice it. Just see what. First, I would say, do the red and green if you haven't done anything like this before. I told one of my nephews that years ago, and he just a couple weeks ago told me that he still does that. That if he has a decision to make, that, and this is, not just, do I want toast for breakfast or whatever. It's like, do I apply for this job? Do I tell somebody, and this is what it usually was for me, do I talk to somebody about a difficult issue that I really don't want to talk with them about, and yet I know that it needs to be done? And so that would be like on my way to work, say, and I had a situation with a coworker that, or a staff member that I needed to address, and I was like, do I do that today or not? And then I would just go along and I'd get green lights, I'd see green bushes, everything would be green. So that meant go do it today.
It's a
Or I would
beautiful-
see reds and that meant don't do it because the
It's a
time wasn't
beautiful-
right.
Beautiful lesson in God and trusting in God and
Yes.
trusting in your guidance. It's just a beautiful lesson.
Mm.
Thank
And
you.
I totally trust in God. It sometimes, of course, I waver and I think I need to do this on my own. But invariably, I am to the point now. I'm 71 years old. I've had a lot of practice, and I just trust, because there's been enough times where I can't do it on my own. And yes, I have not just the guardian angel. I have many, many spirits out there who are always at my beck and call. We just have to ask. And that was, for me, one of the hardest, not hard, it took practice to remember that I have spirits who are always willing to help. I have my driving spirit. So my driving spirit is the one who tells me yes or no on that particular drive, which is, I think, shorter to get to my house, but don't go that way this time. Yeah.
David, have you got any?
I have this whole other world going on.
Yes, well, I wanted to say that your sharing of your experience of receiving the divine love resonates with what I shared last week. I mean, that feeling of just floating and oneness with everything and this beauty and all that. I mean, that's a beautiful way you shared that. It's just this knowing that you're receiving this. And for me, like I had said, I didn't know what it was, but it was beautiful. So I appreciated the way you shared that.
No,
Laurie.
it's different for all of us, I think.
Yes, it is.
But it's indescribable. What I tried to, I used to tell my children when they were little that you will never know how much I love you until you have your own child. Then you will understand. And I would say a parent's love it's indescribable. And then this is multiple times that.
It's because God is our parent, the parent of all beings. And so I think I resonate with that in prayer and your prayer experience. And for me, it's just being thankful for all the blessings. I think that's what you were sharing, that you're thankful for all the blessings you've received in life and for the spiritual, being aware of the spiritual love. Very, very beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is beautiful.
Any other questions, Yvonne? Have you got some down, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, just go ahead and ask, because I'm sure I forgot half the things I wanted to tell you.
Talked about your children becoming disillusioned, and I'm sort of wondering, did any of them find divine love, or any of them on the divine love path?
We are so blessed. My children all understand God. They all have a connection in different ways. Like my one daughter, I'll give you an example. She was having a massage by a spiritual healer who was saying, Becca, have you read this book? Have you heard about this spiritual leader or whatever? And Becca said, you know, I don't. I just know God. And I thought, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is due to you, Lorraine, the very fact of all the sharing and the caring and the loving that you've done with them to take them to that.
I will take some credit. I also think that we choose where we come to be in life, and God gave those children to Lee and me and we talked about this, and I think this was one of the most important conversations we had as parents. Was the children were very small. I think they were toddlers. They're like 4.5 years apart from the oldest to the youngest. And I think the oldest was probably 4.5, and then we had the new baby. And it was like, we don't own these children. These are God's children, and we are just here to guide them, help to raise them to be independent adults who are respectful and caring for others. And that was an unusual conversation. I think it must have been guided because it formed our lives with those children. That's why we chose the Catholic school, which would have the values, promote the values, and make it easier for us as parents to raise these children. So they're lovely adults now.
Oh, that's lovely. One of the things I've written down while you were talking is that it comes over very clearly that people have been really important in down your path to divine love, that it's a very big issue for you, and that might not be the case for a lot of people, but it clearly is for you. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, and I was so fortunate when I was starting on the spiritual path. Metaphysical was my first experiences. I actually had a reading, the first reading, and she said, you were put into that big family where people were so different to help you learn how to live in the world. So I understood what she said, but I see now that I know how to relate to many, many different people, and I love people. I went from accepting people, which to me, I know we say, oh, we'll accept whatever. And that didn't work for me anymore, because accepting means that I've judged them to be lacking. And it didn't seem loving. So I went to allowing. I allow people to be who they are, where they are, doing what they do. And I don't, what they might be doing might not be right for me, but it's where they are. And I think it's really important that I allow them to be there. And I asked for how would I say this? The love and compassion to come through from me to them. And that's, I'm not going to say I'm perfect at that. I still practice that, because every once in a while it'll be, what is that person doing? Like throwing trash out the car. Well, that's one of my pet peeves, of course. But it's like, that's where that person is right now, and who knows? Anyway, that's one of my practices. Yes, I love people. I love children. I love older people. I love everything. I'm just one of those people.
Any more questions? I was going to say, how are you, Yvonne? What about you, David?
I pretty much, the only thing I can think of now, just curious, Lorraine, is you went into the metaphysical studies, and you mentioned Edgar Cayce. Whom else did you study before you found divine love? I'm just curious what other types of metaphysical teachings you had looked at.
Oh my, there's Journey. There's so many books out there.
Yes, there are.
Journey of the Soul. Mostly it was focusing. Well, first I went to near-death experiences, all the steps, and then I went through the communications with spirits who were on the other side and what they experienced. I had readings done. I've done past life regression, which is like reincarnation. I loved the idea of reincarnation. And, you know, I even went to Berkeley Psychic Institute, would do readings, and they'd have interpret or pick up 3 past lives that you've had. And so I was with a group that did, well, they were practicing. So I was one of their practice people, right? Well, I had some amazing reincarnation experiences, apparently. But then, I mean, one of the most fun ones was I was a saloon owner in Alaska during the gold rush. And it was that this was a safe place for the miners to come when they came to town. They weren't going to be ripped off. It was a good place to get food, and I was a nice proprietor or whatever. Anyway, so things like that, and it's like, this is so fun. I really could get into that. But you know, I mean, and that's just one of them. I was a monk at one time. I was an African woman with a beautiful family. I was a Russian woman who lost her children, who went around the country telling the religious people that they didn't know how to handle grief and all this stuff. I mean, I was always on a cause, apparently. But I realized once I came to really consider reincarnation, unlike you, David, you questioned it, right? It didn't, why should we have to come back? Well, I didn't question it so much that way, but I thought, I learned about, oh, I know where I really came to that realization, other than the messages, Jesus saying there's no reincarnation. And Yogananda even came through and said that. And Yogananda was big in my life. I even went down to the California place and I could feel the atmosphere there. So what happened was I learned about soul or spirit attachment, spirit overcloaking, shadowing, all that. And I knew that I have spirits close. I feel them. When my mother passed, she was with me very intensely until a psychic helped me or talked to me about what was going on, and we allowed my mother to move on then. What it was is she didn't, okay, here I'm going off on a tangent, but she didn't realize what a special child she had. And so once she passed over, she could see my gifts, I guess, and wanted to make up for that, because I was the very middle child and in a family of 9, though she loved us. And that's where I realized, okay, now, you know how roads have all these little paths? That's where I'm off now. That's where I really realized love is, my mother loved every one of us children so deeply. And that was my example of love in this world. So anyway, my mother, I could feel her, and she just never had time for all of us. And I understood that. So anyway, she was now wanting to spend a lot of time with me, but it was holding her back. So the psychic reader and I helped her go on, and she's still around me, but she's moving forward, and I can see kind of the progress. So where was I can't even remember. Oh, reincarnation. Okay, so I realized that that's what it was, is those spirits, whoever had experienced that life, was close because I was going through something very similar. Like this bar proprietor. I was the owner of the bar and the restaurant in the whatever, Alaska. I was looking to start a lodge here after I retired, where I would invite people who just needed a respite, who were weary of this world, which I was when I quit work. And if I had had something like that, I probably wouldn't have had to quit work. But I wanted people to be able to come to this lodge and pay minimal amount and just be out of the world and have the love and caring of a spiritual life, basically a retreat.
Yeah,
And
spiritual retreat type place. Yeah.
yeah, but very economical, and not for people who were spiritual, for people who just were weary, and there's no place for people like that to go. Well, that didn't work out, but that's why that person was there at the time, is because
Mhm.
that's the environment I wanted to give. And
Yeah, it's
yeah,
attraction, that mutual attraction, I
right,
guess.
I think so. I think, and those, the psychics could pick that up, I believe.
Mhm.
So, because I never had except that past life regression. But again, I think that was a spirit coming and teaching me what I needed to know at that time, which really did help me move on through that stage of my life that I was kind of stuck at. So for me, everything has had a meaning and a reason to have happen in my life. So even this conversation, what's it
Yeah.
about? You know, I hope
I'm sure it helped us all, Lorraine. Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, you're
It's
welcome.
lovely. It's been amazing. It was
Thank you,
amazing,
Lorraine.
special.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
it really has.
glad to share.
I, for one, feel as if I know you a lot better now, which
Oh, I bet
is
you
lovely.
do. Well, and I welcome people to talk with me about it. One thing that is difficult for me on this path right now is that I don't have people that I can just, come to visit and we just sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
I do have some, I do, but like if I go to a family reunion, and I come from a very large family, cousins and all that, you think I would talk about my spiritual life and spirits in my life? Probably not. And yet I've discovered recently a cousin that I hadn't had contact with for a few years, who is very spiritual.
No, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Can I ask you one very quick question?
Yeah.
It was the last one I wrote down, and that's, what gives you most joy in your divine love journey? Because joy is something I think that we really need to talk more about.
Yes, joy. I've been an optimistic person all my life, and I think it's just that connection with God and all of his creation, especially the people. So I just have a joyful life. Very little gets me down. And when it does, I know it's not going to last long. So yeah, and I love to sit in prayer, and I just have a prayer. I see a bird flying and I think, oh, how beautiful. Or I see a baby or a child. I mean, everything just sets me off in joy.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely. Shall we bring it to an end now? Thank you, Yvonne.
You probably should.
And thank you especially, obviously, Lorraine. And thank you,
It's so nice
everybody else.
being with all of you.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening. And bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great day.